Hello and welcome to the show, coming to you from London. The world's biggest democracy stands on the brink of an election result that could leave India struggling to find a decisive leadership at a crucial time for its economy. The event has involved 714 million eligible voters, 1 million polling stations, 6 million deployed security personnel, and more than 1,000 registered parties whose candidates are contesting 543 parliamentary constituencies. In this fifth and final phase, voters in the states of Tamil Nadu, Punjab, Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh and Bengal, West Bengal cast their ballots. Voting was also held in the federally administered territories of Chandigarh and Pondicherry. And the main fight is between the ruling Congress party-led alliance and the parties led by the more right-wing Hindu nationalist BJP, although there's a host of regional opposition. Results will be announced on Saturday the 16th of May, and an outright majority is highly unlikely. Either way, the new government will start work in June, facing massive challenges, particularly as the global economic crisis takes its toll on India's growth rate, which has slipped from its strong 9% showing for the past few years. On top of that, regional security remains a major concern, from Pakistan and Nepal to Sri Lanka's conflict, which was highlighted during political campaigns in the South Indian state of Tamil Nadu. With exit poll numbers trickling in, analysts predict a shaky coalition government that may not even survive a full term. On today's show, we examine the possible outcome of the Indian election and ask, what sort of power shift will there be in the world's largest democracy? Remember, you can join our conversation with your questions and comments. Log on to livestation.com/AJE, enter the chat room, and you can take part. We'll also welcome your phone calls on the show as well. Well, joining me to discuss the prevailing factors in the election and the possible outcome, I'm joined by Meera Kandar, the Senior Fellow at the World Policy Institute and a 2008 Fellow at the Asia Society in New York, from where she joins us. Ms. Kandar's writings have appeared in numerous publications around the world, and she's author of Planet India, The Turbulent Rise of the Largest Democracy and the Future of Our World. From Washington, D.C., I'm joined by Daniel Twining, a Senior Fellow for Asia at the German Marshall Fund, who previously served as a member of the State Department Policy Planning Staff responsible for South Asia, and as Senator John McCain's Foreign Policy Advisor in the U.S. Senate. Daniel's there in Washington, D.C., as I mentioned. Welcome, both of you. And if I could start with you there, actually, Meera, if I could ask, what radical change do you think there might be in the way India's governed following these elections? Any major upsets, you think?
I don't think there's going to be a kind of a radical break or a radical change. As you said in your prologue, it's going to be a hash of putting together a number of disparate parties. The horse trading that's already started is going to be fast and furious till the results are announced on Saturday, as no party is going to take an outright majority, and whether it's the Congress party leading the UPA, the BJP leading the NDA, or the third front scenario, they're all going to be trading furiously to try to pull together enough support to hit that lucky 272 seat number. I think rather than an abrupt change, what we're going to see is maybe just kind of slogging forward, and that's not a good thing for India at this moment.
Mm-hmm. And Daniel Twining, I wonder, even if there was any kind of change of party at the reins, how much that really would manifest itself in change in terms of economic and social policies and the direction that India is taking?
This is a good question. People asked this question in 2004 with the transition from BJP to Congress-led coalitions. Certainly in foreign policy, you saw very little change. There was a lot of continuity there. Big question now is whether you have not a national party-led coalition coming to power, but a third front of regional parties, and what this means for economic reform. Many of these regional parties bring with them local rather than national agendas. Some of them do have good records of reforming in the states that they've been running. But this is a big question mark for the business community. I think we saw the Indian stock market go down a bit today when this question arose.
Actually, Meera, to what extent have coalition governments held India back in recent years? I mean, are they essentially quite problematic?
Well, they've certainly been blamed for holding India back, to the extent that the feeling is that a coalition government having to satisfy many, broad range of interests and demands from its various partners simply can't make bold policy decisions, is not in a position to do unpopular things like, say, things the business community would like to see, like further reform of the labor sector, further steps to liberalize India's economy, for example. So in that sense, it has been blamed as a kind of a lag. I think beyond that, that, an even greater problem is that it really is a danger of watching with each election India's whole political process, its democracy, degenerate into this kind of fractional, feuding to cobble together what are less and less forceful coalition governments, less and less able not only to do what various sectors want government to do, but even to give some kind of national vision and purpose to the central government.
Mm-hmm. Daniel, it's true that the major parties, Congress, BJP, is certainly having to line up their potential allies. Which has been more successful in lining up perhaps the best partners it might find, assuming a victory? Some kind of victory.
Pundits have been doing a lot of three-dimensional chess, looking at all the possible coalitions that Congress and the BJP could forge with different regional allies. You almost need to know advanced algebra to understand some of the mathematical outcomes here. The bottom line is that the exit polls show both BJP and Congress-led coalitions running very close. They're both going to need regional allies. The maths here get more complicated because some regional allies are like oil and water. They will not both serve in a government led by either BJP or Congress. Again, big question marks about not only how BJP and Congress do, but about how their favorite allies do, and we'll know soon, next 48 hours, I think.
And Daniel, what have been the issues that have been pressing potential allies of the major parties to push? What have been the priorities for these parties in terms of the election when it comes to issues?
Yeah, it's a good question. You can answer it two ways. One of them is you can go back to Mira's point about the parochialness of some of the alliance building, the political coalition building. A lot of it is about who gets what cabinet jobs, how many regional allies get put into a given government. The other side of this, though, is that you end up with, if also a more factionalized government, there's a scenario here where you end up with a broader coalition that reaches across India. This is the genius of India with all of its states and all of its pluralism. You end up with a government that represents a lot more of the country than one that would be more narrowly construed. I think the big danger here, just to finish, is that what ends up happening is not a majority-led coalition, but a weak minority government supported from the outside by one of the other big parties. This is the scenario where India really is weak and rather leaderless for the next 12 to 18 months until there's a more definitive election.
Mira, on the issue of the various factors that have been guiding the policies, at least guiding the policies during the campaigning, were you surprised that Sri Lanka's ongoing crisis was one of the issues that seemed to hit the voter campaigns, certainly in the south part of India?
Well, it's not surprising at all because the population is targeted, both the civilians that are caught in the crossfire and, the object of the Sri Lankan advance are ethnic Tamils, and, Tamil Nadu has the same ethnic population. So it's been a big issue, and, Tamil Nadu could be a major swing factor in the coalition that emerges out of this electoral complexity. Jayalalitha, is the head of the IAEA party, and she's got 39 seats to throw at a coalition, and she hasn't yet pronounced which way she might go, though she's officially part of this third wave, but I don't think that they'll probably form the coalition.
Daniel, an email, if I may, that came in from South Africa, if I could put this to you. Hope wrote in saying, "The enemies of India are the Islamic extremists of Pakistan who have hijacked Indian airliners, murdered and caused mayhem in Mumbai. India must take a firm line with Pakistan." Do you feel this was clearly demanded by the voters, that whoever does take over really has to be pushing a much harder line with India, or with Pakistan?
I mean, what's interesting is that you haven't seen the kind of leading debates about Pakistan in terms of differences between the big parties that you might have expected. This is because, frankly, both the BJP-led government that fell in 2004 and the current government that's been ruling for 5 years have pursued quite similar policies, despite some different rhetorical glosses. India, people forget, has almost almost as many Muslims as Pakistan. So it would always be a mistake to say that there's a certain Muslim vote in India and that this affects Pakistan relations in a certain way. These issues are quite complex. The current government has shown remarkable restraint since the Mumbai attacks last November. The BJP opposition thought it might be able to profit from those. In elections late last year, after those attacks, it turned out that the BJP actually lost seats in some of the states rather than gaining them. So the Pakistan thing doesn't necessarily play as clearly as we might expect.
We have a caller on the line from Florida in the USA. Noon, what would you like to ask?
Thank you so much for your time, Riz. I would like to ask these wonderful people if India there will be a debate in India regarding India becoming a member of the IAEA, since it is one of the three UN de facto nuclear states, along with Pakistan and Israel.
Daniel, I know you've been looking at this issue as well, India's position on the Atomic Energy Agency's position.
I mean, most of the action on this front really happened in 2008 when the U.S. led India through the process of getting both IAEA and Nuclear Suppliers Group approval for the U.S.-India civilian nuclear deal. Basically, the bigger story here was bringing India into the International Nuclear Club as a responsible nuclear power. So most of this has already happened. There's still some technical details for India to wrap up. There's another question about the International Energy Agency, which affects both India and China. The U.S. Has wanted them in that club for a little while now. These are two of the biggest energy-consuming and producing nations in the world, energy-consuming, rather, nations in the world, and it's crazy not to have them in that club. So I think the U.S. position is that the more international clubs that India is in, the better, because India is a responsible country and has important interests at stake.
Well, Daniel Mira, we've got to take a short break at this moment, but there'll be more of our discussion in a moment. As we pause, let me remind you, you can join the conversation with your questions and comments by logging on to livestation.com, where the chat room's taking place, and you can see the debate in there right now. We'll be right back.